petty, partisan, angry politics get in the way of our responsibilities as a great nation.
President Biden addressing the nation in just the last half hour. He touched on his visit to Israel. His priority, he says, is bringing American hostages home. He denounced hate crimes. He emphasized the connection of Hamas to Russia, saying both are threats to neighboring democracies. Retired Army General and NBC military analyst Barry McCaffrey joins us live tonight, and we're happy to have him with us. General, thanks so much for being here.
Good to be with you, Joyce.
You heard the president's comments. He talked about the importance of democracy, about denouncing threats to democracy. For the American viewer, why does his message matter?
Well, to start off with, I think President Biden and his team have done an extraordinary job with a horrendously complex and brutal situation. Not just the president, but also Secretary of State Tony Blinken in particular, and the Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. So what their primary objective, except for getting the hostages back, which is in great peril, is to prevent widening of the war. And I think it's problematic whether they can keep Hezbollah out of it with 100,000 fighters in the northern part of Israel, but they're working to keep the Arab Middle East supportive of a just solution to ending the war, and trying to get Egypt, I might add, to contribute humanitarian assistance to include potentially taking in Palestinian refugees.
You know, I want to talk about this notion of the expanding of the war. As you know, the Gaza conflict has spilled over into the West Bank and beyond. How concerned are you that this is going to explode into a regional matter?
Well, I think it's likely that Iran will stay out of it. They fund, they train, they give guidance to both Hamas in the Gaza Strip and Hezbollah in northern part of Israel, in Lebanon. But I think Iran's going to try and stay out of it. They have a lot to lose. The Syrian army, I think, will stay out of it. So the real question is, will Hezbollah, with 120,000 rockets, of which some 15,000 are precision-guided weapons, will they enter the fight? I think it's 50-50, they may well. And that dual front presents a real challenge to the Israelis. They've mobilized, as you know, 360,000 reservists, so they're prepared to fight on both fronts, but that will be put them in great peril.
You know, the president said that his number one priority is to bring the hostages home. And Israel has also discussed this top priority of bringing the hostages home and equally eliminating Hamas. How do you do both of those things and at the same time think about the civilians in Gaza?
Well, there's two problems here. One is 200 plus, maybe 250 hostages hidden all over the region, 300 miles potentially of underground tunnels. It's hard to imagine how they find them, locate them, rescue them. They must go in on the ground, I think, to try and eliminate Hamas. Once they gain control of the surface streets and knock out fighters in the vertical structures, then they're going to have to go underground, and hopefully they'll use rewards. They'll offer safe passage for Palestinians that turn in the locations of these hostages, but it's going to be a very difficult situation for the hostages.
I'm going to ask you about the president saying that he's going to go to Congress tomorrow in just a moment, but I first want to talk to you about the costs and the consequences of going in on the ground.
Well, I think, to be blunt, the Israelis have no option. You know, I tell people the most consequential part of a war is how it ends. It's less consequential how it began. And so the question will be, Hamas has achieved a terrible surprise attack on Israel. 1,300 civilians brutally murdered, women, babies, it's just astonishing, hostages taken. So I don't think the Israelis have an option but to go in and try and dismantle the political and military leadership and the support infrastructure of Hamas. In the course of doing that, they've tried to target only Hamas elements. But 2.5 million people in an urban area, obviously that's a great tragedy for the Palestinian people. They've tried to move some of them out of the area of main combat. Maybe 500,000 are now in southern Gaza. The Egyptians are keeping the border closed. Humanitarian aid has not started flowing. And by the way, 10, 20 trucks is nothing. This is probably like 200 18-wheelers a day to adequately take care of this population. So it's a very painful, tragic situation.
The president says he's going to Congress tomorrow to ask for billions in military support for Ukraine and for Israel. Was he effective in the ask? And with the chaos that we're seeing in the U.S. House, not able to function, how confident are you that the U.S. is going to deliver any of that military aid?
Well, it's really disgraceful. You know, we say three co-equal branches of government. Actually, Article 1, the ultimate power in our government is Congress. It's a legislative branch, and it's stopped functioning. It's not just the House Republicans, but as you know, all appropriations bills have to start in the House of Representatives. They don't have a speaker, so far it means there can be no meaningful legislative action. It's a shameful situation.
And finally, I really want your view of what we're seeing here on the home front, the uptick in threats against the Jewish community, even violence with a 6-year-old Muslim boy who was stabbed to death in Chicago. Your take on that and where we should be in terms of our mindset as Americans as we watch this crisis unfold?
Well, there's a lot of political division, a lot of anger, a lot of disinformation floating around our society. We're seeing this in the run-up to 2024 election. I would say, though, that we cannot lose sight of the fact that this was a brutal surprise attack on Israeli civilians, monstrous action, not a rogue unit or some rogue fighters. This was a deliberate terror attack on a widespread part of the Israeli population. The Israelis handled it very poorly. They had an intelligence failure and also an operational failure. But nonetheless, that's the reality that the Israelis are now facing. And they must take some action to say this isn't going to happen again next year. In the process of doing that, the tragedy will get a lot worse.
Do you think, finally, General, that we need to really try to separate the humanitarian piece of it, the horror of it, how people need to treat other people, and the political piece of this?
Well, I think they're enmeshed irrevocably. You know, the humanitarian corridor from Egypt into southern Gaza may well provide some relief to some of these Palestinians. The main fighting will go on farther north in the urban areas. But until the Israelis gain control of the situation on the ground, and then hopefully there'll be an international effort to rapidly intervene and provide some sort of support for the millions who are caught up in this fighting.
It is always a pleasure to have you with us. Always grateful for your analysis and your insight. And of course, we'll be talking to you in the days ahead as this is just really at the very beginning stages. General Barry McCaffrey, thank you so very much.
Good to be with you, Joyce.